I fear again that something like this could occur in the future. You know, the one thing that must happen here is an independent commission must come into being. You know, if there's one thing that this exercise has shown more than anything else, is that the sooner this code gets an independent commission, the better. Because to compare it to the other code here in Melbourne, it's just embarrassing, it seriously is. And that can't continue, it really can't.
What makes you think that the Deloitte's investigation wasn't independent?
We have no idea whether it was or it wasn't. If it had been commissioned by the NRL, and it was an independent commission commissioned by the NRL, we would have been more than happy to contribute to it. But the fact is, when we went to that fateful day in Sydney on April 22, there were certain things that we were assured of as far as legal representation, which was not the case. So as a result, we became very wary of anything to do with the NRL in that matter. We would have been more than happy to contribute and to be involved in any independent investigation that was NRL sanctioned.
What's your feeling regarding the legal action that's currently before the courts? Obviously, you said you're waiting for legal advice, but what's your feeling?
Oh, look, that's a really difficult one to answer. We've obviously asked our legal representatives this morning for advice on that matter. As to where that will go in the future, quite frankly, in our own hearts, we know what we would love to see happen. Now, whether that's possible or not, that's something that we'd really have to take some legal advice on that before we comment on that.
Is it your understanding, though, that all your powers have been effectively stripped because of your dismissal?
Certainly, once you're dismissed as a director, you're no longer director of the football club. So as a result, you certainly cannot be aligned, or you cannot be associated, or you don't have any power or direction as far as that football club is concerned.
What's the legal, like, what are you looking for?
Look, I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a lawyer. So we've gone away and asked our lawyers to go away to provide that advice for us. So until we obtain that advice, it's impossible for me to comment on that.
Just finally on that, if you were to continue forward with it, then I guess you'd be continuing on behalf of the fans?
Again, it's impossible for me to answer. I don't know the answer to that. It's really a question that has to be answered by our board.
In light of what happened today, though, you still would be the penalties imposed on this one too hard?
Well, quite frankly, that's the hardest thing to answer. You know, the report, we're not privy to what's contained in that report. Now, I heard today from John Harding, and then in 2007 the breach, I think, was 500,000, in 2009 it was $1 million. Now, I have no idea how that breach is detailed or how it occurred, but I don't think anyone else has either. I don't think you people have seen that as well. So, until such time as you know you get a full transparent inquiry and investigation, I don't really see how this thing ever finishes. Like, in my view, the two things that were needed were, one, was a full and independent inquiry, and then the court action should run its course. It really should, because then if you can prove that the proper due course was adhered to, as due process was adhered to, well then the thing is done and dusted and finished with, and we can then move on with the future. But as I said at the start, it's very difficult to know where you're going until you work out where you've been. We have no idea where we've been.
The police have been called in to investigate this now, investigate possible fraud. Do you think, do you have much confidence in what the police can actually do now, even that a couple of months have passed, where the Deloitte's investigators have been through those offices, hard drives have been taken away, files have been taken away? How confident are you in the police investigation?
Look, again, I don't know how to comment on that due to the fact that what's actually occurred, we don't know. We're not privy to that detail of what's contained within that report, so you would like to think the police are obviously going to be privy to that report. What I can say, though, is that two of those names today that were mentioned today, who were, I think the term used was suspended, I think for those two names to be used and named in the context they were today was one of the more shameful acts that I've witnessed in a long time. It seriously was. It was dreadfully unfair on both those individuals. It seriously was. Both those individuals had the best interests of that club at heart at all times, and to be named in that manner today, in my view, was quite shameful.
What about the John Harding's attitude towards Brian Waldron? Do you think that was justified?
Look, again, without knowing the full detail of it, I can't comment on that. But quite frankly, if that full investigation ever does take place, whether it be by police or be by independent arbiter, that's the time when those just deserts will be handed out.
You've answered one of those four reasons that were quoted for why you were dismissed. At least one of the others was that you hadn't done enough to address the problems going into next year. What would you have to say about that?
Oh, look, that's dreadfully unfair. We sat down with the football department and worked out what we could and we could not do. In fact, we had 3 different scenarios to go away and deal with next year, depending on what we thought how far we were over the cap next year. So that was already very much in hand, and as I said, we had 3 different scenarios to go away and deal with that. And they were all done before we became aware of the salary cap being increased as well.
One of the other reasons was the fact that you persevered with the court case. What would you have to say about
Well, we persevered with the court case for one obvious reason. The support base wants that. They want that. They don't feel that we've got a future, as I keep saying, until we work out where we have been. The support base is adamant. The one thing they want out of all of this is to find out exactly what our history was. They don't want this lopsided transaction. And even today, we've been inundated today, again, with very upset supporters who are so disappointed that this court action may not continue. Now, whether it does or whether it does not, I'm not in a position to answer that at this stage.
You obviously have knowledge of where things stand though going into next year. Where do you think it's going to go in terms of how many players the club can take?
Oh, certainly the club's going to lose a considerable amount of players, there's no doubt at all about that. But as I said, there was 3 different scenarios that we worked on, which certainly will fulfil a competitive side next year, there's no doubt about that. Will it be as competitive as in years gone by? Of course it will not, because it just will not have the quality of player.
What about the stars, big names, the Phillies, Slater, the Green?
There are certainly scenarios where the big 4 can certainly remain, no doubt about that.
How would you describe New Zealand's role in all this then, in your opinion?
Oh, look, you know, the one thing that News Limited must be commended for is initially for the investment that they've made in the game of rugby league in this state. There's no doubt all about that. You know, and that probably exceeds something like $100 million, so no one can deny that investment that's been made. But while that conflict still continues today, where they half own the actual competition itself, and then they're involved in direct ownership of a club like this, then they go and ask independent directors to go away and help administer and manage the club on their behalf, and then you go away and dismiss the directors when something untoward occurs and immediately label them responsible for it. I don't see how you can go away and have a future without having an independent football club in this state. I think the sooner this football club becomes not privately owned, but owned in the same manner as you and I know here in Melbourne and in Adelaide and Western Australia and South Australia, but once it becomes owned in that manner, I think you'll be back then to having something that's so vibrant you'll never see these sorts of days again.